and it's good to be back, tanks and tankettes. Uh, it's nice to be back, and we'll start off fresh with a new model, and this time it's an old Tamiya Panther Kit. In fact, this thing is so old that it's, well, you can see here on the box, it's from 1975, and it makes this kit 47 years old in 2022. So yeah, it's a really old kit. In fact, it pretty much makes it vintage. And here you can already see that it's nicely built and finished, as well as primed. Probably with some of the worst Zimmerit paste application that you've ever seen, using Milliput and also a mixture of Tamiya white putty, but not the right kind that you would think of, just the basic white modeling putty. And even just with the Tamiya surface gray primer, sort of stippled on, and to create my own texture on some of the points of armor. But here we can just go ahead and prime it. I know I probably should have covered the tracks and other suspension in primer, but I just didn't bother, just out of laziness. But it was just something that I maybe should have, not have overlooked. But all in the end, Tamiya paint holds on very strong, and it's very helpful for just priming on your own models. I've even seen in some modeling magazines that they will prime their model with just lacquer thinner or with anything else in nice opaque layers that eventually it becomes really strong. But I probably don't recommend it for if you're working on any photo etch or any metal parts, as of course it won't hold as strong. And here we're just painting on the turret. As you may have seen from the thumbnail, it's supposed to be a Soviet TV or Panther, Tank 5, pretty much. It's about as boring as a name that is, but yeah, this Panther is, of course, supposed to be from War Thunder, as some of you may know, but yeah. Here you can see the turret is actually not to my liking. I wasn't really satisfied with how it came out. More gray-green and almost sort of bluish tone, that it didn't have that nice richness, which I probably really should have switched to NATO green. That is a nice rich green from Tamiya. And of course, eventually I'll add a semi-gloss varnish / satin varnish to help boost that nice richness of color, which you'll eventually see. I even mixed in some dark yellow and some, actually in a random mixture of also flatly yellow all over the turret, mainly focusing on the higher points and overbrushing, as some of you may know. Not dry brushing, as you can see the brush is still moistened, but it doesn't have as much paint on it as if I were actually to be applying multiple layers. I hope that makes sense, but yeah. It's as much as I can show you here and as much as me explaining it. So yeah, enjoy me painting it. And here I'm just adding some random stippling of, basically like as if I was sponge chipping it, but, just adding different highlights in other areas of faded paint. Maybe you could even actually start off with early chips here, but I add that afterwards when I do the semi-gloss varnish. But also this helps out bring out maybe some more interest in the lack of detail that you can already tell in this model kit. And which is a shame, but it's also very understandable, is that if we were just in 1975, this is all we would have. There's not much you could do, and compared to if I had a more modern kit, which is nice, but also keep in mind that I picked up this kit for $23 from my local hobby shop, which is personally, I think that's a very good deal, as usually that's the same average price I would pick up a 1/72 model kit for at least $16 or between $30, if it gets to a more expensive side. But this is a nice, fun, great kit to pick up for anyone new. It's not super detailed, and you don't have to worry about photo etch. It's simple, it's basic, such as a novice myself, pretty much. I've only been doing this for at least 2 to 3 years, actually. I'll save that story for another time. But I started in 2014, but off and on. But I really started to get back into the hobby in 2019. So yeah, again, another video for another time. But here you see me applying on a wash, but not really our soap wash. Never. This is just a kind of more like pre-shading. I'm gonna add back the color, add back some vibrancy, and it'll basically just be our own little shadows before we add the wash. Which you don't have to do this, but I just like doing this just because giving us maybe some grime, earlier stage of weathering. But again, most of it will just be painted up over again with our overbrushing technique. And here I'm just using some Tamiya semi-gloss. Also be careful if you're using this on maybe any other acrylic paints that are not as durable compared to Tamiya paints, because remember, Tamiya paints are actually lacquer based. They are not 100% water-based acrylics compared to like Citadel and Vallejo. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. It can eat away if you don't thin it down properly, and it'll just add an ugly, weird texture to your paint. So yeah. So here I'm just using some olive brown. You could just use a dark brown, really, and it's more of a sort of an early stage of weathering the lower hull. As you can see, even more up top, I'm using a soap wash at the very top of the model and on the engine deck, but also just the olive brown at the bottom is just thinned down without any use of soap. And you can even see in the turret, I'm actually very satisfied with how it came out. I think there's some nice highlights of faded paint, because in my mind, maybe the Russians did paint it over with an airbrush. I'm not 100% sure on that, on my knowledge, but I like to think that they airbrushed it / brush painted it at the same time, and as a field operation, it's something they didn't actually, more like in a field maintenance depot just for tanks. But of course, this thing never saw action, and so in my reality, it did. And I will add, eventually chipping and other bits just to add more interest to its story. And there you saw me use some Citadel white scar, which I actually found out that it's regarded as one of the worst white paints, but I actually kind of like it, in my opinion. I don't know, maybe I'm just an idiot, but I genuinely don't understand what people don't like about the white scar. I know that people liked Korak's white, which is better, but maybe they don't like it. It's because of some of the little chunks that I do find in the paint of the Citadel color, but I don't know. I personally like it. It came out nice and matte, that when you look in the contrast between the matte white paint compared to the satin turret, it just looks really nice in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But here you just see me using some highlighting the rivet bolts with some Citadel color, and of course just Citadel Rune Fang steel. You can just use any silver or aluminum color paint. It doesn't really matter. And well, really, it's just, I think I picked this up actually from Coldman's PL, and personally I think it's a really nice technique or at least choice of color on the model, just to add some interest. And yeah, even using some mud, the white acrylic putty mud that's used for walls, you might be familiar with, but it's very helpful just creating a nice mud texture, more subtle than rough, as if you might be used to. But you can see I even got a little bit ahead of myself on weathering the upper front hull. I apologize if I didn't even show you that, but I feel like it would just take up more of your time, and just in my case, and how long I take to finish my models. But here I'm just using also some olive brown as like a thin wash, or I guess more of a heavy wash really on the side of the turret, which will eventually be mostly removed, because I just wanted it to tone down the pure white color of Scar White. But in the end, I should have just used an off-white color to help give it a nice blend on the turret, especially when it's not going to be perfectly white. after some time in use in combat. And now for some chocolate brown and black, and really just for weathering, heavily weathering it down and thinning it for our texture. It's actually sort of the color I was kind of going for. I wanted a red-brown earth color, but I think I came close to achieving what I wanted. Maybe a little bit too dark in some areas than what I was going for, but all in all, I think it came out pretty nice. And from looking at it, really. But of course, I'll let you be the judge of that once you see the models finished. I'd also like to, personally note and thank you all so much that we've managed to reach the 2019 subscribers, as of now, as I look now. And, it would actually be more perfect if it was at 2022 subscribers, same sub count as the same year, but it's just blows me away, and I'm so fascinated that so many people are actually, sub to me and or watching or enjoying the videos, or if you find any helpful tips, or or maybe just enjoy a calm video of just someone painting their models, in a not so good fashion. But I honestly can't thank you guys so enough just for the amount of support, and as I continue to grow this channel and share my thoughts and opinions, my techniques of just brush painting models. I could pay homage to Quick Hits, and which really he inspired me, as long with other skill modeling channels, but especially the big ones out there, which if you know what I'm talking about by that. But it's absolutely amazing, and yeah, I can't wait to continue going on for many years on this channel and just continue to grow and grow, and yeah, just I'll forever be humble that I have people coming in, and I pretty much helped, I created a community along with the help of you guys, and without you guys, I would be nothing. So yeah, breaking off that humble moment, I'd like to show that I'm using some lead belcher, as I also showed earlier some Model Air Silver from Vallejo on the metallic ricochet bits of bare metal that has been exposed, and maybe you could say that there are at least other 75mm shells, or maybe even just a little bit smaller caliber, but I'm not 100% sure, but let's just say we'll leave it at that. But here you can see that I even add some chips of like paint that has been blown off, or very light chips of the original camouflage of the turret being exposed. You can already see I've done a lot of work on the turret of scratches and bare metal sticking out, not rust. Number keep in mind, it's not exactly rust, but it's up to you if you do want it to be rust, especially on the hot metal bits. Again, it's your model and your choice, but just the metal that has been oxidized and other bits that are heavily weathered, as you can see on the cupola or even the weld beads. But here I'm just showing you how I created the ricochet bits, hot metal that has been thrown around with using some black brown, and then maybe even some very dark brown around the edges and areas. It's not the most realistic thing, is it's on Zimmerit paste, as a lot of it would have been blown off and chipped off, but you gotta work with what you have, and try and find a way to fix things of your own mistakes, but yeah, this is how it ended up, and I'm actually very satisfied with how it ended up in the results. So yeah, enjoy me weathering this as much as I did as well. And now for some real earth effects. And what better way to do it than with, using real earth and using our mixture of water and a little bit of airbrush thinner to give it a nice flow, as was some Vallejo matte medium as shown here. Vinyl acrylic resin. I believe you can also even try to do this with any other matte varnish that you have, but I just find that this method works best for me. But use whatever works best for you, of course. But here you can see that obviously it looks wet when it's applied on, and it's gonna look that way. It's not gonna look that way after when it's dry, especially once we add on our own earth color tone to it. And you can even see that nice little surface imperfection that I've applied on. Obviously some extra stowage too, but it's just really nice details that I like that I added. And now for some 75mm projectiles, or these shell casings, or even just rounds that have not been fired yet, from Tamiya. And I picked this up for $13 there, as you may have seen on the top right of the paper. But here I'm just painting the inside of it black, and then I'm gonna show you that of pretty much how not to do it, as you can see on the shell. That you saw earlier as well, the 75mm that was way too over weathered, in words of the burnt, or that exhaust soot given off from the shell. It should be a little bit more subtle than usual, but I eventually toned it down. As you see at the end, it was just way too much, and yeah, I'm glad I changed that decision. And now for the chipping, it's just as simple as one might think. Adding on a lot more white to the buff color that we use, or the dark yellow color from Tamiya of your choice. But it's just adding nice little light scratches and chips. A very fast technique way of doing it is doing sponge chipping, but here I'm just showing you how I did it with a very nice thin sharp brush mixed in with some AK retarder to help give me that nice increased drying time, of course. And eventually you see me apply on some black brown for that nice oxidized steel chip look. You can also even use some neutral gray color tone for that natural steel color, of course. But here I think it looks pretty nice in contrast to and how it accentuates the detail and adds more interest to the model because of how flat and basic it looks. Because let's face it, this model is lacking in a lot of details, and you have to make up for that fact of adding your own, details and words of textures and other bits of weathering. And really, it's actually it's very fun to have a blank canvas like this model, because you can just do away with it as you please, in words of weathering and chipping. And now, here you can see me play with fire. And, since I'm such a caveman, I'm using a lighter, or you can even just use a candle, but I found the lighter to be a faster method because for this little brass color of chain that I like using, which I think it's appropriate, almost maybe appropriate size for the scale for 1/35. I'm really 100% sure. But yeah, of course, don't touch it afterwards when it's very hot. But you at least want to wait 5 to 10 minutes on burning it. As you can see now, it's like a nice natural dark iron color. Because early on, you see that if you think it's already ready just by the way it looks black, that's only burned and charred. And you might have noticed a little bit of soot on my fingers, as it obviously means it's not ready yet, and you have to give it more time to burn. So at least 10 to 20 minutes of making sure your chain, especially if it's a big one, like this one, and it's very long, then you want to give it some time. And eventually you can see here that it doesn't even rub off. And there's some very hard to see areas that actually do look like brass, but it's very subtle and hardly noticeable. But overall, it came out pretty nice, and I'd say it's an excellent technique of doing it. Now we can move on to the spaced armor on the sides of the tank. Here, I'm using an old aluminum can from a ginger ale can, And you can just find any little bit of aluminum that you have available to you, cut it out from the center, and just there you go. You have now, well, actually make sure you flatten it out before, because it's going to be a little bit warped, but aluminum is a little bit more flexible, unless maybe you have some copper or probably some brass sheets, but I've heard copper is best, or maybe pewter foil, as someone might have said, to use it for nice spaced armor panels or any other bits of sheet metal that will prove useful to you, for your hobby adventures. So now you see that how I cut it out just into a rough shape, not being precise really. I'm thinking of this as like a field modification done by the Soviets, afterwards, especially when this kit actually did not come with any spaced armor panels, surprisingly. But I guess for those of you that don't like it or don't want it on your Panther, then this is the kit, probably for you, especially if you're a beginner. But for more experienced modelers, I probably wouldn't imagine them picking up this kit, since of how simplified and basic and heavily lacking in detail it is, especially on the tracks. There's so many basic things that should be there but aren't, sadly. But hey, you get what you pay for, $23, and it's actually not so bad in the end. And probably for some of those people out there that like to take this model and face it as a challenge and pretty much super detail it with aftermarket stuff, and that are incredibly skilled in this hobby at just adding their own details to their models. But that's not me, at least not yet. But as I was talking, I was painting with a red-brown color, pretty much red oxide. It doesn't have to be that color. I was just having fun with the color, just for my own taste. But again, starting off with the buff color from Tamiya, adding on some nice opaque layers, chips. Eventually I'll show you my own textured weathering acrylic mud, which is actually made with hard pastels and with some Tamiya red-brown acrylic paint. And it's a good way for just adding your own mud texture, especially if you do want it more subtle or a little bit more rough, which, again, entirely up to you. I eventually ended up liking this overall result for this model, just the how it was toned down significantly. I think I probably should have added a little bit more brown filters for this, since buff is such a yellow and vibrant color. And especially compared to the others, I think I actually ended up using some dark yellow, just lined up a little bit. But I like the color differences, and it adds a little bit more interest, as if the side panels have been there for longer or are just painted in a different color. So yeah, I hope you have some fun watching me weather this as much as I did. As I said earlier, it's just so much fun painting and weathering a blank canvas and doing whatever you want to it. It's subjective. It doesn't have to be incredibly realistic. It's just having fun, just so important. So I'll shut up now and let you enjoy this segment of weathering the side armor panel, and it's actually very satisfying with how it ended up in the results. So yeah. As we come to the finish line of this video, if you again somehow managed to make it this far, I have no idea how you've managed to listen to such an idiot like me go on for so long about the steps and techniques that I've shown you how to weather this model and build it, or not build it obviously, but paint it. Thank you so much. You're a legend and you're amazing, and you have an amazing tolerance to listening to fools like me. But all in all, this model was so much fun. Probably spent a little bit too much time, a little over at least 3 months of my life working on this model, off and on in between times. But I think it ended up being worth it, as I think this is one of my prouder models, and how the way it finished and how it looks. So maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't, but again, I can't thank you all so much enough for the achievements I've reached of 2K subscribers and over. And I'm just almost speechless to how much progression we've gotten. So yeah, I can't wait to show you more of my projects in the future and get back on my groove of uploading videos and doing some more scale modeling, as I did have a stopgap. Everything in life is fine, just sometimes even with things that you love doing, you're gonna find moments of it to where you're gonna take a break from it, which is, I think, a healthy choice and option. So I will see you all later.